Namaste. So we start a mini series, as it is called, from Savitri. It's like gems from Savitri, but we do it in the form of a theme, and we take up the theme of fate. Why? Because one, Savitri is about changing fate. So those who believe that Indian thought is fatalistic must know that in Indian thought, actually it is just the other way around. Even in the conventional law of karma, if you say that what you reap today is what you have sown yesterday, but it also implies what you are sowing today is what you will reap tomorrow. So it within it is this, that every energy that you have thrown into the universe will have a ripple effect, go back and come back to you. So karmic law is not about reward and punishment, it's about your choices. And based on your choices, there will be the different lines of evolution which will open towards us. So it's like we are on an evolutionary journey, and depending on the road we take, we'll go through certain experiences. Where will these roads lead us? Well, there is a saying in English, all roads lead to Rome. Let me paraphrase it. All roads lead to Ram. What I mean by that is, what was meant by Rome? It was a huge empire, it was extending all over. Before it vanished because it hit at the core of the empire, which was, Rome was prosperous, one of the most prosperous long time empires which one can ever imagine. There were three, four like that. One was Egyptian, pharaohs. So the moment the power got into their head, it collapsed. And same thing we see with Rome. With the crucifixion of Christ, it started declining. Some people say it lasted another 400 years or whatever. But eventually it declined. Otherwise, it was a very powerful empire. So Rome was a figure, meaning thereby that ultimately all roads, wherever you go, the empire is there. Like the British Empire, that the sun never sets. All the suns have set now. So, but in a similar way, we can say that, well, one corrective which is there within nature is whatever road you may choose, at the end of the road, it is the divine, because there can be nothing outside the divine. In Indian thought, divine is the center and the circumference of the great circle. So that's the saving grace. Having said that, surely one doesn't want to go through a very dark and dangerous and bumpy road. It's not a good choice. The choice should be a beautiful journey. But so be it, whichever way we go, ultimately we go toward the divine through those experiences. They are not rewards and punishment. There are all kinds of roads. Some people love to go in one way, some love to go in another way. So, what really is this fate? How does the law of karma operate? Is there a deeper determinism? What about the choice of the soul? What about divine grace? Is it all pre-decided? Or is it like every moment there is somebody like a grand accountant who keeps the account and according to our deeds writes in the next column reward or punishment? So all these things we find beautifully answered in Savitri. So, and much more. So we'll just read the first passage today. We'll read is actually so many passages which reveal to us these deep truths. But let me just start with this little question which people ask. Why are we subject to fate? Why doesn't just God come and do things for us? Why all this drama this long? So it's replied elsewhere, its truth is revealed elsewhere. But for the moment, there is a very interesting passage on page 6 of Savitri, in very book 1, canto 1. Sri Aurobindo describes the dawn has come. But you see, when dawn comes, how beautiful it is. Everybody wants to greet the dawn. And some people send us lovely pictures, and we enjoy those pictures and look at the dawn. It's so beautiful. But what happens after that? We just the image is of, after some time it turns into the common light of earthly day. So here comes these lines. There was the common light of earthly day. Dawn has come, she has gone back because she is unwanted. The message ceased and waned the messenger. She is not wanted by earth. So she fades away or melts into the common light of earthly day. Affranchised from the respite of fatigue, once more the rumour of the speed of life pursued the cycles of her blinded quest. So once more people get up, start doing what they are doing. Blinded quest. Unthinkingly, unconsciously. Ask somebody, why are you doing what you are doing? Mother says one of the best first preparations for yoga is to become conscious of your motives. And she says, you go to the samadhi every day. Why do you go? Is it just because you are told? No, it should not be the reason. So we must know the motives. But it's a blinded quest. And one of the worst answers you can ever get is, because everybody does it. If somebody used to tell me as a child, because everybody does it, I used to feel a strong response. And I would say, that's the reason why I should not do it. What's the point of doing what everybody is doing? So, the time one thought had come, long back, 12, 13, I noted down. If you want to follow someone, follow God. If you want to be original, become divine. So either which way. Why? Because everybody is doing it, but we do it unthinkingly. So here that line comes. Pursued the cycles of her blinded quest, all sprang up, all sprang to their unvarying daily acts. I don't know whether you have seen or not the life of routine in a typical household. From morning to night, everything is in a way fixed, especially the food part. Half the time, 90% of the time is spent on what you will eat, what, when, how, cooking, all these things go on. The 1,000 peoples of the soil and tree obeyed the unforeseeing instant's urge. We don't live a conscious life. We are moved by urges, impulsions to speak, to act, to do what we do. A feeling rises, we don't question it, and according to that, we are driven. So it's a very mechanical life driven by forces. We are like a toy. Like a toy, khilona, and it's not a good feeling to be a toy in the hands of agencies which we don't know. And look at the sense of humor. Leader here with his uncertain mind. Several places you have very wonderful humor, divine irony in Savitri. Man is the leader. Leader here with his uncertain mind. Leader doesn't know which way to go. Leader doesn't know where to go. Leader doesn't even know why he is here. And leader here with his uncertain mind, alone, who stares at the future's covered face. Man lifted up the burden of his fate. Animals don't. There is a kind of humanity which doesn't bother about fate. It lives this way. It just lives like an animal, morning to night, night to morning, and it goes on. But sign of man is that his eyes are turned towards the future, forward. So he looks forward, he anticipates, he wants to understand, he wants to master the tomorrow. Animals don't have date record. When will we meet? Tomorrow. There is no tomorrow for an animal. It's today. Some people teach this as very profound philosophy. Well, the only way of living in the present is live in the highest present. Not like a present can mean anything. Animal lives in the present. He doesn't store food. He doesn't worry. He doesn't bother about bank balance. He doesn't bother about... But that's not the kind of living that we want to live. We live for the future. This is given to man. Of course, to live in the present is beautiful, but in the highest present. Because at any point of time, there are several present opening their windows and doors before us. So, what does God do? He comes to tell us how to walk, where to go, because He knows man's mind is the dupe of his animal self, hoping its lusts to win. So, God comes and helps man. Gives a message. All the messengers, they come and tell us something. Look here, this is the way to live. If you live this way, you will go this way. They come and give us a kind of a guidance which we find difficult to receive from within. So that's how it is described that Savitri came like the dawn. But what happens? Earth's grain that needs the sap of pleasure and tears, page 7, rejected the undying rapture's boon, offered to the daughter of infinity the passion flower of love and doom she gave. So divine says there is a way to live when you can be, or life can be always beautiful. So some people say, what's the point of such a life when you're always happy? You must have joy and sorrow. There are people who believe in this philosophy. It's like painting without shades. You must have. So divine says, okay, if you want that sort of stuff, nature will give you. But I want to give you a life which is of eternal happiness. That's what the mother says, that Sri Krishna came to teach people how to live freely and joyously and normally. He came to show us that. And what is that life? Centered around Krishna, the divine within us. But human beings cannot do that. And hence, Krishna is exiled from Vrindavan. That's how there is this. What did Christ come to show? He also came to teach how human beings can live with freedom. But they crucified. Freedom we don't want. So this is what man does every time God's messengers come. This is what Sri Aurobindo describes. So this is in answer to what is God doing? Why are we bearing the burden of our fate? Well, God tells us that there is a way. But are we ready to follow the way? That's the whole problem. And this is described on page 7. Hard is it to persuade earth nature's change. What is the way? If you want to change the world, change yourself. Earth nature's change. If you change, you may discover that many things that we regard as bad luck were not bad luck at all. Many things which we say, oh, what a bad fate, we may discover, it was not the bad fate, it was a grace which I missed out. Why? Because I was of a certain kind, with a certain kind of nature, limited nature, I was looking at life. As Mother says that when you grow perfect within, then you discover much more readily the perfection that you want to see in the world. But then you will see that yes, everybody has this, something or the other. Same way, when we change within, the sting of fate, behind the mask of death, terror, sickness, you will see something very beautiful hiding. To change within. And there are so many stories. So one story is, plenty of that. One is an ancient historical story. Often I have recounted this. Of an empress, and the maid broke a expensive glass mirror in which every day she would see and, nicely comb her hairs and admire herself. Nothing wrong with that, okay? But mirror, mirror, tell me all, who is the fairest of us? Mirror just reflects your own feelings. One day the maid broke it accidentally and she goes and tells this queen, Your Majesty, the mirror is broken, such a precious, priceless mirror. And is waiting for the sentence. And the empress says, very good. The flatterer of my ego is gone. Same thing. What appears as a calamity to our ignorant vision may appear as an opportunity to another vision. But Man is not ready to change. Why? Hard is it to persuade earth nature's change. Mortality bears ill the eternal's touch. Have you seen? Even now, people strongly opposing. Sometimes I ask them, when they say Rama and Ramayana against all this, I said, don't you have any better job than, just breaking your head? Okay, Ramayana is an old scripture if you want to put it like that. Why are you spending your time and energy? Rama is long, long back. Sometimes, of course, you can justify and explain, which I do sometimes. But sometimes I say, you're a jobless fellow. You're trying to prove who Durga was, did she exist or not. Those who believe, let them have freedom. You talk about freedom of speech and tolerance. Tolerate those who believe in Rama. What is the problem? What is your problem? So, why there is such resistance? There is a reason for, and they'll find all kinds of fabricated answers. So, there is a reason why humanity doesn't bear the eternal touch. It fears the pure divine intolerance of that assault of ether and of fire. What happens when the divine beings come? They say there is a path, there is a goal. What is that goal? Ascension of the human into the divine. Every human being, every divine being says it in some way or the other, in some measure or the other, to some degree or the other. That man is not the last term, you can upgrade yourself. That's what they say. Now, if you believe in the divine being, you have a problem. It means effort. So, it means effort. If you have Rama as an ideal, my God, problem now, there is a problem. You will always remain with one wife. Even when she goes away, you will say that I'll remain faithful to her. That's Rama. And if your wife is abducted, you will not say, okay, good riddance. That's not dharma. You will fight against the tyranny of the asura. It's not about your liking or disliking. It's not done, just not done. That's too much. If you are thrown out of the kingdom, to keep the word of your father, you will say, I agree to renounce the kingdom. That's too hard for human consciousness. Why? Because it is fed on the staple diet of filth. What is filth? Man is filth. He is a pig, he must feed on mud. So it's so comfortable to remain an animal. I have openly asked some people, when they do this, I say, why? You are happy to remain an animal? You say that there is no God, no divine. So by default it means man is nothing but an animal. Then you expect him to be good. If there is no divine, if there is nothing greater, then there is no basis for goodness. You may say that, okay, you will organize society in a nice way, because it will help you. Why? Why shouldn't you just grab things and possess and kill and loot and plunder? It is the natural consequence. If you are a social animal, you will be like an animal. Probably you will devise strategies. Not always with claws, but smile on the face, but have the claws inside. But the moment you say, no man, you are divine. Oh, where is the divine? You have to find. You have to grow into divinity. Oh, this is too much of effort. It's much easier to remain an animal. That is the unconscious resistance. Even to recognize it is too much of a labor. It's very easy to conform to a thought where there is no God, life is driven by desire. That's how the Asura says. Life is a creation of desire. And there is no God within. So wonderful. So live by desire if you feel like picking up something. Now this is desire. The law of desire will eventually never be satisfied. So you'll end up wanting more and more, and you'll have greed and things like that. Or else what some people do is they pay a lip service to the divine. Okay, God is there, but He's also there to fulfill my desires. You see what happens? Heaven's messenger comes, but we cannot bear it. It murmurs at its sorrowless happiness. God, what are you going to give me? Sorrowless happiness. I need right now house and car. But my child, that is going to take away your happiness. Excuse me. But sir, I need this. I am convinced that if I have this, I'll be happy. But my child, you don't understand happiness. No sir, you don't understand my demand. So he says, Tathastu. All the asuras had the tathastu despite the divine being telling them, don't ask for this, you'll be in for trouble. And then he gives a house, and then you realize that you have purchased not just a house, but a big musibat. Yeah, so many things to maintain. It's not easy. And then you have another house coming up which is better than yours. That it creates another problem. Somebody comes and he makes a remark, big issue. So all these things, which and your life is then centered around that. House is a dwelling place. It should be a beautiful place, without a doubt. But to invest all the energies and money that one day we'll have this. So he gives us sorrowless happiness. Sorrowless happiness means, yes, if you are in a palace, you'll be happy. You should be happy. But equally, if you are in a hut, you will be happy. Why? Because you have discovered that happiness inside. Almost with hate repels the light it brings. Who hates light? The denizens of the dark. It's their comfort zone. They hate light. It trembles at its naked power of truth and the might and sweetness of its absolute voice. See this might and sweetness. So people sometimes ask, where is that new world? What is your... how can you say there will be a new world? Of course, there is long answer. You can say it logically, rationally, all this. But one of the answers is, sir, Sri Aurobindo says so. Sri Aurobindo says so. He has seen better than us because he took all the trouble, because we couldn't take the trouble. He took the trouble to discover the future. And he took all the trouble to show us how to realize that future. That's why the mother says Sri Aurobindo is the luminous future advancing towards its own realization. But then, if you want the long answer, then life will reveal to you the long answer, or lives. So it trembles at its naked power of truth and the might and sweetness of its absolute voice. Inflicting on the heights the abysm's law, it sullies with its mire heaven's messengers. This is exactly what we have been doing. There is a kind of modern thought which loves to reduce greatness to its own mud. It takes a great joy in it. Why? Again, because if there is greatness, you will be inspired to move towards it. But if there is nothing great in this world, Sri Aurobindo says that there is modern thought tries to prove that there is nothing like greatness. And he says if there is no greatness, there is nothing worth living for in this world. And you see in Indian thought how they created such wonderful characters. Greatness. But we reduce it to our own, pettiness and level. Its thorns of fallen nature are the defense, and what it does, something still worse. It turns against the Savior hands of grace. Grace comes to take us out. My child, don't take the burden of your fate. This is the second side of the great story of Sri Aurobindo, where he says everybody has been taking the burden and putting it over the old lady's head. But the Maharaja must do something more. He must not only carry the burden, ensure that the lady doesn't have to carry the burden ever. And the divine is ready and willing to do it. But we turn away. Mother at one place says, my child, the divine grace never withdraws from anyone, but very often men withdraw from it. Various reasons. One, desire not fulfilled, divine doesn't exist. You are ill, divine doesn't exist. So we shut up against the grace. It meets the sons of God with death and pain, a glory of lightnings traversing the earth scene, their sun thoughts feeding, their sun thoughts feeding, darkened by ignorant minds, their work betrayed, their good to evil turned. No, human beings go one step still further. Not only they deny the grace, turn away from the Savior grace, they betray the grace. They misuse the grace to run their little shops. So that's how we see how each time the divine comes, There is a religion which is formed, and that religion becomes, as it extends further and further, something very dark, from which the divine recedes into the secrecy of his silence. They cross their payment for the crown they gave. That's why Christ still hangs in Jerusalem. Every year Christian world celebrates, rather solemnly observes, supposed to observe solemnly, that Christ, he died on the cross for our sins. And from next day, or even that day, they start new sins. How many times Christ has to be crucified? They love that figure. I have never understood. At least now you take him down from the cross. Make him splendid. Okay, that is a reminder, it's fine. But now you don't do it. But that's why Christ continues to hang in Jerusalem. And Krishna is, that is why, exiled from Vrindavan. They cross their payment for the crown they gave. Only they leave behind a splendid name. They erect a monument on the God's messengers, and after erecting the monument, they make a good business for themselves. So this argument that why man has to struggle with his fate, God doesn't want us to struggle. He wants to take our burden on himself. Are we ready? Meaning thereby, do we have this faith that the divine doesn't want to make our life difficult? Mother at one place says, she says to Huta, my child, you should get rid of this idea once and for all that the divine does not want you to be happy. He wants you to be happy. He's not a sadist who says, no, only when they are suffering. That is, you see, in Savitri, that God made this world so that my agonies can feed him. That divine doesn't want. There's the Asura's theology. That God wants us to suffer so that we remember him. Poor God, such a God se Bhagwan bachaye. Better God can save us from such a God who sends suffering so that we can remember him. He doesn't want us to suffer. He wants us to lead a life of joy, freedom, power, majesty, truth, wisdom, everything that he has, because we inherit it. But it is we who turn away from the grace, and hence man lifts up the burden of his fate.